Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of our wrestling podcast. So without further ado, the following contest is scheduled for one fall, and today's topic, this is Chyna.
Welcome to the O.W.P. This is our Play Podcast. This is Butters along with Jess.
Hello.
And Cuz.
What's up, guys?
Giving you our perspective on the world of wrestling from a pure fan standpoint. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. And now on for our topic today. We are going to talk about a woman of many firsts. We are going to talk about Chyna today, guys. I think it's very fitting. We've got the Hall of Fame coming up, with or before this this particular episode airs. But it's been a topic of ours off the podcast for quite a long time. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about Chyna. A lot of arguments about Chyna. And I think it's just a fantastic topic. Personality, character, person that we can touch base on. Just to give you a couple of ideas, guys. Billed as the ninth wonder of the world. We talked about the first. She was the first female enforcer. She is the first women's Intercontinental Championship, which, by the way, she's held twice. She's the first woman to participate in a Royal Rumble match and a King of the Ring tournament. And she was the first woman to become a number one contender for the actual WWF Championship, not the Divas Championship, the WWF Championship. So, and she's held major victories over major male wrestlers, which, quite frankly, has never happened before, with the exception of maybe there's some lucha stuff out there where, quite frankly, sex doesn't matter. But that doesn't happen on the main stage, the world stage, until Chyna breaks onto the scene. Anything you guys want to talk about Chyna? Before we get into the early years and the wrestling years and some of the tragic events that unfold after. How do you feel about Chyna?
She was definitely different, and I think obviously that sets it apart. Whenever you get something that's different, that goes against the grain of what you've been doing, you're going to get all kinds of interest. I think she also came along at a period where change was happening, not just in the world, but in the wrestling world. It was changing. Mm-hmm. And I think she also became part of a group that represented that change, that kind of spearheaded a lot of that change. So she was perfectly fit in. The right people found her, the right people brought her in, the right people put her in the right group. And I think all that together was perfect. I mean, it really was. It was just the best. And it was during the best period of wrestling for the most part at the time.
I think that's true. The best period of wrestling is definitely key. And I think a lot of people go out of their way to talk about maybe Chyna's luck and Chyna's taking advantage of that luck. But you know what? There's also some things to be said about luck. I always am of the opinion luck is when hard work meets opportunity, and Chyna found an opportunity, and I think she took full advantage of it. So you have to give her credit there. But yeah, you're right. She was brought in by the right people who saw something in her, and I think she took full advantage of that for quite a long time, and was very good considering her background and where she came from. It was a big step up, and she, didn't really flub it until she definitely burned it after a while, but she didn't flub that chance. She stepped up to the occasion. Cuz, do you agree, disagree, or have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no. I mean, Chyna, man, she's leaves a long lasting impression. I mean, I remember, you couldn't help but notice her when she first was introduced in the scene. And honestly, when I think of the original DX, a lot of people think of Triple H, X-Pac, and the New Age Outlaws. I think of Chyna, HBK, Triple H, and Rick Rude. To me, that's the original DX, and they all stood out in their own way, even though Rick Rude was only in it for a short amount of time. But they all, Chyna, just like them, she left her mark, and yeah, she was something special. She was something to behold.
And let's face it, Hitman, I'm younger than you.
Everybody's younger than him.
Everybody. I'm better than you.
Everybody's better than him.
And I'm certainly bigger than you in more ways than one.
Good God, you're gonna put an eye out with that thing.
What I'd like to have.
We may need a 3-hour show to get this out.
Now is for all you fat, out of shape, Ottawa idiots.
She's an OG.
Yeah, OG.
D Generation X.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that's true. She really is. So get right into it. Chyna's real name was listed as Joan Marie Laurer. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
She was born in Rochester, New York, 1969. She was the youngest of 3 siblings. Her parents got divorced at 4 years old. She had 3 different stepfathers and even 1 stepmother. It's a lot of parents out there. She had some issues with some parents threatening suicide. Had some pretty violent situations in the house with her biological father. And there was alcoholism in the family. They had moved several times. It's a pretty tough childhood for some, and I think a lot of people have gone through things like this. They understand. I personally have not gone through anything like this. Her father stabbed her mother in the thigh with a bread knife, supposedly accidentally. I mean, that's just crazy stuff, And all the while, she learned how to play musical instruments. She had unfortunately a bad incident with a much older teacher who kind of took advantage of her. By the time she was in 7th grade, she began purging. She actually left her home at 16. Her mom tried to force her to drug rehab, and she left and lived with her bio father instead. And then at that time, she began to work out and start to, form the body that you see now. She got into working out, and that kind of was her escape, it seemed like. So she even lived in Spain for a while, which is kind of interesting. That's where her last year of high school was. Pretty dramatic childhood. And then her early adult years wasn't much better. She was, I don't want to say allegedly, because she stated it. I don't know if she reported it and if it ever went to trial, but she claimed she was raped by 2 men after she was drunk at a party. Just a lot of bad stuff going on for her. So this is why I always say too, like, yeah, you know what? Someone saw her and definitely discovered her and gave her an opportunity. But man, to be able to be this successful, given all of this, that says something about somebody's character. Would you guys agree, disagree?
Yeah, no, from the beginning, it seemed like it was hard. And then take into account, I'm not trying to be mean, but the way she looks, like she, we all know that we'll get to the point where she worked on her body and the plastic surgery and all that stuff. And when she was at WWF, but she didn't look like a normal girl. I think she looked kind of like a freak. She looked like a boy, a man. And because she was always bigger than her age, like she always looked bigger. So I think that was, and unfortunately people prey on that. Even if you don't look like the classic little girl and you have some pervert who's into little girls or little boys or whatever, they also like the people who like look on the opposite scale, and she didn't look like a typical little girl. It's
a target because she's insecure. Yeah.
And so she probably looked for love in all the wrong places and looked for companionship in all the wrong places. And unfortunately, you have these predators out here that are going to take advantage and not give you a chance. From the beginning, she was fighting. She was trying to figure out what was right and what was wrong and why are all these things happening to me. But a positive thing about her, too, is Chyna was really smart. She was a very smart person, and a lot of people don't talk about that. She actually spoke Spanish, she spoke German and French, and she could talk in those languages, like have a conversation. And she studied major Spanish literature, and that's what she graduated with when she got a major in Spanish literature. So she was, really, really smart and really wanted to educate herself. And on top of that, you have someone who's doing all the right things in life and then they're being taken advantage of in a negative way. That's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, it is.
From that upbringing, you never hear of people doing that. You always hear when people get brought up in that environment that they just, immediately fall off a cliff. And they don't drop out of school. They do this, they do that. But she didn't. She still kept going to school, and she graduated, with a major in Spanish literature, which is really intelligent, really advanced. And then she learned 2 other languages on top of Spanish.
Do you want to add to that, Cuz?
Oh no, I was just agreeing.
Okay, all right. So, she actually, after college, she started to attend regular fitness competitions. But believe it or not, this is what's crazy, right? Talk about the stereotypical version of what women should look like. Even in fitness competitions, because she was so large, like she was a big, like not big. We're talking about like she had body fat because she didn't have much of any, if any, because of her large size. Because she was so muscular and vascular, she usually finished in the very last place. She was too big. I mean, can you believe that? There was no, at that time, when you think about it, because of Chyna's, like you said, her look, her actual physical prowess for a woman. I mean, she weighed in at 180 pounds. No fitness woman weighs in at that. They usually weigh in probably at $130 at the most. And because of that, she was finishing last place constantly, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's just not what they were used to. She didn't fit the mold, which is, to your point, I guess someone else saw her and the WWE discovered her and said, we should be celebrating this special individualistic person. And they did. And it was pretty amazing. But before that, she started training on the independent circuit for about 2 years, from 95 to 97. And Jess, who did she train with?
She trained with Killer Kowalski, who's the same person that trained Triple H.
Mm-hmm.
How cool is that? That's such a weird...
Former lovers.
Such a weird, I don't know.
Coincidence?
Like, they had a threesome with Killer Kowalski.
Yep.
Whoa, hey, that's not true. Stop.
Come on, jump on.
That's gross.
Ain't got lady.
Well, they trained, Killer Kowalski trained both of them, and they did not meet from that training, I don't believe.
Exactly. Yeah.
They discovered
they
her.
met later, which is ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah. She actually met Triple H about a year later at a professional wrestling show. So after watching tapes of her matches, they decided to bring her in from there. So Triple H did bring her in. So he didn't discover her through Kowalski. He just discovered her a year later, which is, pretty interesting stuff. And that's when they decided to bring her in as a bodyguard. And it's funny because Vince was not really for it. And I think Vince thought the way I think the majority of normal people would. Why would anybody believe that a woman's going to beat up a man? I'll tell you right now, that has changed. I mean, Ronda Rousey, I think a lot of people believe that Ronda Rousey could beat up half the male roster right now with her skills and her ability to put someone into into the armbar. I think a lot of people, it's believable.
I'm sure she could.
Because she really could, right? She really could. But think about it. Do you think if Ronda came around the same time as Chyna, is that believable? It may not be. I think Chyna made this stuff believable. That's kind of where it all starts. This is the kind of credit that she may or may not get. And that's the kind of stuff that we argue. Do you think Chyna paves the way for someone like a Ronda Rousey? What do you guys think?
Chyna did, but Ronda, she paved that way for herself in another sport and, broke those barriers in that sport. So, it made it believable because you were looking at a badass MMA fighter. But, before Ronda, Chyna was the one that did break that mold. Because then after you started seeing what WCW had Asia, and then you had Jazz and, a couple other tough girls that were coming up like, hey, I could take on the men. But, Chyna started that shit.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. While they're waiting to make a decision, WCW actually wanted her to be the sole female performer of the New World Order. And she had initially accepted that offer, but she turned it down when Shane McMahon informed her she was about to be hired.
Thank God.
And Vince was not going, no, damn it.
Yeah, could you imagine? I don't know what they would have done.
They would have just ruined the shit out of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would, yeah.
And by the end of the year, Hogan would have somehow big boot and leg dropped her and beat her.
This is gonna take
at the end of it.
What would have happened was the one night in China would have actually been on Nitro.
Oh, my God. That's awful.
Since Xbox was,
you stop it. Yeah, who knows what would have happened? She wouldn't have met half those guys, probably at that point. So, anywho, we start the World Wrestling Federation, and she starts with who, cuz? What's the faction?
Degeneration X.
Well, and the way they introduced her, it was actually pretty unique. It was the In Your House Final Four in February of '97. Is when she debuted. Goldust and Triple H were in a feud, and Marlena was obviously in Goldust's corner. She was Goldust's manager, and I'm gonna try to play this and see how it sounds. But this is when people like romanticize about when someone debuted or when something happened. Oh, I remember it was just crazy. It was the crowd was crazy. Listen to this. This was the debut of Chyna.
Let him fight. Let's go. He's like his head. He's yellow. He won't get in there. Uh-oh. May get in there. I wish he would. Get him, Hunter. Wait a minute. Who the hell's that? Who is that? What in the world? Is that a woman? Security taking that lady away.
So basically, Goldust was on the outside of the ring. Marlena was coaching him up, like, "You're okay, baby, get in there." Triple H was in the ring. They were having a match, and then all of a sudden, the camera pans, and you see this large, muscular woman putting Marlena in a chokehold. And from the rail, she's in the crowd, Chyna is, and she's grabbing Marlena from over the rail, and they had security whisk her away like she was just a fan or something like that. But my point is like they didn't see it as a waste. So many companies will try to, she could have came down the ramp and then people would have been like, what's this man-looking woman doing? Whose side is she on? They could have done that, but they didn't. They didn't do it like that. And you hear the crowd's dead because WWF was just kind of boring at this point. And for the most part, they were working on other things on the top of the card, but they were just trying to find their voice on the bottom. They were trying to make a star out of Triple H. He wasn't the Triple H that we knew. They were trying to, use Goldust and Marlena as faces, and when Goldust entered as a heel originally, and so they just said they met in private. Shawn Michaels and Triple H, they met at an event, and they were just trying to work on Vince. And like you said, WCW almost got her, and then Vince finally broke down, and they're like, "No, please, like we'll make this work. Just trust us." And so they debuted her like that, and that the crowd was dead. They tried to pretend she was just a fan. Like, it was just kind of crazy because when you think back, I remember when Chyna was there, and oh man, that place went crazy. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Like, a lot of people say that about other, debuts in wrestling, and that's just that to me is what's lost. I can't let myself rant right now, but they knew the story was going to be introducing her and getting her into that group. It didn't matter what the first encounter was like. They just wanted it to be shocking. They wanted it to be different, and they didn't give a shit about a pop. Most of the time you book wrestling for a pop, right? Or a heel reaction or something like that. This, they were like, no. We just need to shock. We need to get people to talk and be like, what the fuck was that? Like, because they knew people were going to say that anyway.
That's what I was thinking. The silence there is what you wanted, because you want to be able to go, ooh, was that supposed to happen? What happened? And you're trying to get that reality base on top of that, Jess. So you're not just, you almost want the shock value and the silence to be there because you want them to be confused. What's going on? Because this was all about the reality base of wrestling. This is where it was all coming from at this time. This is where they were going.
And what a lot of people remember the most, I think, about that was I forgot that that's how until we were researching for the show, I really forgot how
she debuted.
Yeah, she debuted, because a lot of people remember her getting in the ring on Raw, which I don't know if it was the next night after the pay-per-view or the week after that, but when she got in the ring and she bear hugged the shit out of Marlena, and Marlena sold it and whipped her hair around, but she grabbed Marlena from behind, like the way Brock comes behind and tries to German suplex you, but she just shook Marlena in a bear hug, like hardcore, like in the ring, and Marlena whisked her hair all around or whatever.
busted up Marlena's ribs, just squeezing the life. That is a huge woman, an Amazon-like woman attacking Marlena for the second time in 24 hours. Who is this?
And I remember that more than anything, her shaking her. And then the announcers were like, wow, she shook her like a rag doll. And like, it was like, you were like, holy shit, like this chick is huge. Like, and Marlena's a small lady anyway, but you saw the size of Chyna. They actually let her get in the ring. Then you realize like, okay, she's affiliated with Triple H at that point. You only knew Triple H at that point.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, to your point, she's manhandling Marlena. People are like, oh my gosh, this is something we've never seen before. People are in awe. And then at that point, you know, you're only talking about a few years into it. You know, I know we're kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but in January of '99, Chyna becomes the 13th entrant in the Royal Rumble. She's the first woman to ever enter a Royal Rumble.
Well, and before, I don't mean to rewind you back here.
Go ahead.
The DX thing was important because Shawn and Triple H were in Vince's ear in all of '97, saying like, you know, you have to we have to kind of get a little bit more hardcore. We have to go a little bit edgier. We have to do that because the crowd's changing. They don't want clowns anymore or plumbers or they don't want that anymore. They want like realistic storylines. And so we want, you know, they want us to be a little crass. They want, you know, so they really worked on Vince and started D-Generation X, and Chyna was there because she was already at this point established as Triple H's second piece. Like she was basically Triple H's bodyguard, which that was their original thing. Is like, how funny would that be? How much of a heel would that make Triple H that he willingly hired a muscular woman to be his bodyguard? You know, like, because it's funny when DiBiase had Virgil. When you looked at Virgil was in shape. Virgil was cut as shit.
Sure.
So Virgil looked huge. Now, we know in the business, DiBiase was an amazingly talented wrestler and Virgil was garbage. But sure. I mean, like, when you would look at that, everybody would laugh and be like, why isn't Virgil wrestling? Like, you know, Jesus, like, you know, it's so funny because like, which, you know, DiBiase is supposed to be this guy that can take you apart in the ring and be an actual wrestler, but you have somebody who doesn't wrestle that's bigger than him. And everyone's like, why isn't he wrestling? With Chyna, it was different. It was like, you have a woman that kind of has like a man kind of look to her and she's Triple H's bodyguard. And everyone's like, God, what a pussy that fucking Triple H is, you fucking bitch. You have a woman to back you up. She's your bodyguard. Like, you know, and that was a perfect dynamic. It reminded me a lot of the Virgil and DiBiase relationship, but to another level because she was a woman and she was like Triple H's bodyguard. So then when Michaels got with them and they started it, they would start, you know, including Chyna never spoke. So they would just like make jokes at her expense, but like in the D-Generation X way. And it got her to smile. I remember a couple times Chyna would smile and they're like, oh, there you are. Like, and all that. And that just, without her speaking and being this imposing figure that came in and shook the shit out of Marlena and all that stuff, the fans started liking her because people are just like, man, like she fits perfect. Like she's part of this group. So it's we shouldn't understate her stint in like 97, 98 with DX because that was so important. Like that was she was the original, like Cuz said, she was the original four. It was her, Rick Rude, Shawn Michaels, and Triple H. They were the original DX.
I think a lot of people forget that, to Cuz's point. It's just you start to think about everyone else that comes in after that. You know, you got Road Dogg, Jesse James. You got the whole tag faction coming in. You know, you've got so many other aspects. It's kind of like the NWO, right? But everybody knows those original three. But DX didn't really catch fire till later. You know, in comparison, and at the end, we all know who won. You know, we all know what prevails. You can still bring DX now and people still pop for it. So quite frankly, she put that on the map. She's a founding father, if you want to call her that, right? So I mean, not much in that Royal Rumble. I don't even know if she eliminated anybody. Jess, did she actually eliminate anyone? Doesn't say here.
Mark Henry, right? I want to say she eliminated Mark Henry.
Nice. That's sick. That's a great little side note.
All right, no doubt about that. And there goes Mark Henry.
Let me just take the biggest guy up in here and throw him over the ring. That's just awesome. So, and then, you know, after that Royal Rumble, literally a day later, she actually churns on Triple H. And I guess that's where, I mean, it sounds like it's almost like a double churn. She was kind of they're both heels at that point, but she turns on Triple H and she aligns herself with Vince McMahon and Kane, which is a totally different, crazy turn, right? And she teams with Kane on the same Valentine's Day Massacre pay-per-view against X-Pac and Triple H, right? So, and then she turns on Kane later on at looks like WrestleMania 15, attacking him with a chair, and she rejoins DX, right? These are like the churns after churns after churns. She just keeps flipping on him.
This is Vince Russo writing.
Yeah, this is where it gets swerve after swerve after swerve.
But to their credit, and I'm not going to shit on Russo, they were trying to. She could only be a part of DX for so long because Michaels left at the beginning of '98, and then Triple H kind of took up the group. And in my opinion, even though the previous four that we mentioned were the pioneers, I preferred the 1998 version.
Yeah,
when they brought X-Pac back the day after WrestleMania 14, and then Triple H and New Age Outlaws kind of revitalized the tag team division, and then they kept working with Chyna. Like that was the best form of DX to me. Like that, they were way over. They were way over.
That's what
but it wasn't in the world title picture. You had Austin in the world title picture with The Undertaker and Mankind at times and those guys. And then you had D-Generation X feuding with The Nation, with The Rock. And you had this amazing feud with The Rock and Triple H over the IC belt. And that was awesome. So, yeah, 98 was my favorite DX. And it was a great, that's when they came out dressed up as
The Nation.
The Nation.
You know, the Croc just came from the bathroom. The Croc. And you should have smelled what The Rock was cooking.
Look at Velo. Nation ain't gonna like this.
I ain't faking. You should have smelled what The Rock was baking. The Rock was baking.
And they did all that skit and everything, and like it was just great. And Chyna was a part of all that, and she was really a part of the major boom period of DX and the real beginning of when they started beating WCW and the Attitude Era. They named it that later, but I mean that's what it became. And she was in the middle of all that, and they really were trying different things with her. But go on. And I know, and later in '99, as you said, they had to break her away from Triple H somehow, and they had to kind of try to make her own thing.
Yeah, and they really did do that. So I think that's where the King of the Ring comes in. She's qualifying for that, the first woman ever. Maybe is she the only woman ever? I have to look that up.
IC champion?
No, the first woman, the only woman to qualify for King of the Ring tournament.
Yes.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible. I don't know if that'll ever be changed, right? Well, there's not King of the Ring anymore, so it'll probably never change. She's the first woman to be number one contender, which I find kind of interesting. Why make her the number one contender if you weren't going to crown her?
Well, no, they were just throwing swerves at you. Vince, I think, ended up becoming the number one contender, right, or something like that. Like it really was. I think it was all.
She lost it to Mankind. This is what happened. So, but
that was all part of a storyline. You know, when you read those stats on Chyna, it's good that she did that. You know, she's the first woman to be number one contender. But it was again, Russo was
it's swerving, yeah.
On Helmsley. Now wait a minute. You can't.
Well, and I'm not saying it was bad storyline. They inserted her in a top storyline, and that was an honor for Chyna.
And I think people were like, "Wow, could she really win the title?" That's kind of what gets you to turn the TV.
Yeah, and that's all it was. They were just trying to make your normal like chase for the world title a little bit. You know, we're going to throw in this swerve at you.
And then we start getting into the Intercontinental Championship runs, right? Where it gets pretty interesting. She actually gets into that. This is where she becomes a fan favorite because at this time, honestly, was there a greater heel than Jeff Jarrett? There might have been a few, but there's not much. Jeff Jarrett is just absolutely incredible at this time. You know, with Slapnut and everything else, it's just it's quite impressive what Jeff is doing. And
well, he reinvented himself. You know, he was the long blonde-haired Double J, and then I mean that. Long story short, he was that when he was in WWF in '93 when he came in there, and then he left. Then he went to WCW for a while, and he flopped there because they just kind of made him boring old Jeff Jarrett. And then when he came back, he was still long-haired Double J, and then that flopped as well. And so it was pretty much just like, what do we do? So they made him lose a haircut match to X-Pac. And he got his hair short, so he changed his tights, changed his gimmick. He still brought the guitar down to the ring, but then he started doing the slap nuts, and nobody gives Jarrett enough credit for kind of reinventing himself like that, because I like that character.
Jarrett.
The slap nuts Jeff Jarrett was really good, and he just reinvented himself and fit in with the Attitude Era, and then he would later go again to WCW in '99 and kind of still do that same character. So I mean, a lot of people don't give Jeff Jarrett the credit.
No, I agree. And to your point, I think the hard part about this whole situation with Chyna is part of the reason why Jarrett doesn't get the credit that he maybe should deserve, because he made some poor decisions, and because he, quite frankly, doesn't want to lose to a woman, So to kind of give you a quick sum up, she actually challenges the British Bulldog on October 4th, 99 on Raw. She actually beats British Bulldog, believe it or not. And then she had a match with Jarrett after that at Unforgiven. She lost that match, but then she defeated him at No Mercy in at the time, it was his last WWF match, which was a good housekeeping match, whatever that means.
Well,
right?
they had household items like an ironing board and all that stuff, and it was a good housekeeping match. So they used that as weapons and all that stuff. It was a gimmick. Weird. It was silly.
It's one of the greatest matches of all time.
So the big thing about that was Jarrett's always had a history of telling Vince to go fuck himself and kind of just like leaving when he wanted to. And well, at the height of the Monday Night Wars, and at this point, WWE was firmly in control. WWF at the time was firmly in control, and I think they had the program planned before Jarrett said he wasn't going to resign. And I don't think it was Jarrett that didn't even want to lose to a woman. I think Jarrett just wanted to be taken care of. And he felt like, if I lose to a woman, where am I going to go after this? And I know people think that's stupid. Like, you're a fake actor anyway, so what does it matter? But it does in wrestling. People that say wins and losses don't matter, or the way you're portrayed and the way you're beaten, it does matter. All that matters. It always has. And when they don't honor that is when wrestling gets shitty and gets, people are like, that's just super hokey. Wrestling at its best makes people forget that it's fake. But when you start not paying attention to wins and losses, or, not having it matter, or, not having certain things matter, where am I going to go after I lose? That's fine. I'll lose to this person, but where am I going to go after that? Then when you start disrespecting that as a booker or as a creative team or whatever you want to say, that's when you start losing the interest of the audience, because you can't make cohesive storylines if you don't honor the basics. And that's what Jeff Jarrett was worried about. And I'm not saying he was right. Because rumor has it that he held up Vince for his bonuses, which to this day, Jarrett's like, I never did that. I only asked him for money that he owed me. Now, the Warrior in the past that held Vince up said, I want a bonus for doing this, and I want it now. So that's holding someone up for money, or I'm not going out if you don't give it to me. Jeff Jarrett said, I'm not going out if you don't pay me my bonuses now. Like, I'm going to leave your company. You're going to give me or Jarrett didn't sign his contract, I believe. He didn't re-sign the extension. So Jarrett's like, I'm gone. So I don't want to wait 4 months down the line to get all my pay-per-view bonuses. So to give you like a brief synopsis of the way like payouts work for pay-per-views is, for example, you hear people talk about the WrestleMania paydays, and they don't get their bonuses until like the summer of that year, basically, because WrestleMania was late March / early April, and you didn't get which is spring. So you didn't really, it took 3 months for the company to figure out how much the house drew, how much pay-per-view buys came in, how much of that money they have to give back to the cable provider, how much money WWF takes in, how much money, and all that. And then everybody gets paid. So it takes like 3 months to work that out, or it did back in the day. They don't do pay-per-view anymore. But so Jeff Jarrett was pretty much saying, like, if I'm going to leave your company, like when you leave any other company, right? Whatever, let's say you sell tires for a living at Big O, and you leave. You get all your vacation pay paid out. If you resign and put in your notice, you get your vacation pay paid out. You get everything owed to you, all your commissions, everything owed to you is that paycheck. You get it and you're gone and you separate. Wrestling's not like that. So even though Jeff Jarrett was going to leave, Jeff Jarrett said, I want all my money. And they were like, no, you're going to get it 2 months, 3 months down the line like normal. No, I want the bonus that I'm going to get for this pay-per-view for losing to Chyna. And then I want everything that you've owed me. So you owe me like 3 months of bonuses, merchandise money, pay-per-view money. And that's what he asked for. And Vince said, fine. So Vince gave it to him and had the check there that day. Jarrett went out and did the job, and then it got spread that, he held Vince up for money. That's not true. He held Vince up for the money that he already earned. And that's the difference between what Jarrett did and what the Warrior did. And I will fight anybody verbally, because I'm old and I can't win a physical fight. I will fight anybody verbally on if they say anything different. That's the difference between what Jarrett did and what the Warrior did, and people in the past have held Vince up. That's just the truth. It's what happened.
Yeah, it's not quite the same thing, is it? To your point, it's just it never comes off as a good thing. But at the same time, if they had any inclination that Jarrett wasn't going to sign, they should have took the title off well before that. I mean,
and you're right on that. Actually, it's a very good point, and you're right. But talking about this now is easy because we have the Me Too movement. We have women can do anything men can do. We have all that going on right now.
But back then,
this is 1999. No. And you're asking Jeff Jarrett, a woman's going to beat you, and she's going to pin your shoulders. And again, people who are non-wrestling fans will listen to this and be like, it's acting. It's a TV show. What's the problem? But it's not. Like, again, Vince turned this sport into a soap opera. I never wanted that. And I'm pretty sure you two never wanted that. And that's just not what we ever want. That's not what pro wrestling is. And the way the business is today is evidence of that, because he's beating the shit out of us mentally and beating it into our heads that this is what it is. We make movies, pal. This is what we do. Well, now you're shitting on yourself in 2019. And now all the indie promotions that are doing wrestling and portraying it as an emulation of a sporting event are starting to sell out 12,000 seat arenas in fucking 14 minutes. So don't tell me that, it's never a point of contention when somebody wants to lose to someone else. It is important how many times you lose, who you lose to. And in 1999, they were asking Jeff Jarrett to lose to a woman when in a men's division, in a men's driven sport. To look back on it now, what was the harm of that? But in 1999, that was a big deal. And that was Jeff Jarrett's right to protest that.
Your job.
Am I right? Or
you're right. No, it's true.
In hindsight, it looks bad, doesn't it? It does. But the thing, to your point,
I still think today it doesn't look bad.
It does. It doesn't. But you do have to kind of look at it in Jarrett's eyes, where if he loses to a woman tonight, to your point, Jess, he still has to put food on the table tomorrow. And what's that going to do for his particular character when he moves on to another federation? I understand what you're saying. The funny thing about it is this is what really kind of blows me away with it. And it is hindsight. And there are people that can see it, and there are people that cannot. And unfortunately, Jarrett couldn't see how amazing that could have been to just be that heel that finally gets cornered by someone who just happens to be a woman that's going to kick your ass. And it could have been great. It could have been awesome.
You're right. But I think that Jarrett was on a different path. And he was worried about his contract and what's going to happen with all that. That's stressful too. And then then on your way out, you're going to get beat by a woman, and you're going to get
in a housekeeping match. I think that's what the main thing about it.
And so like we said in No Mercy 1999, this happened.
And Jarrett may put the figure 4 on Teddy Long. Chyna's got the guitar. Oh man, Chyna with a guitar. That's not a household item, is it? It certainly is. I guess it is. I don't know. We're going to kill.
Straight up. I mean, can you hear that though? Can you hear that pop for that?
Yeah.
I think that tells you everything you need to know.
No, you're right, and it's good to have that point of view looking back on it, because you're right. But it was hard as a fan. I'm going to be honest. I have no problem with women. I love them. You know what I'm talking about. But I mean that was sexist on purpose, folks.
Wow.
So, I had a problem with that as a fan because I don't know why. Like looking back, I don't know why. She was bigger than a normal woman. She looked like a man. Everybody made jokes about her that she was a man. And we kind of yada past her plastic surgery. When she first debuted in 97, she looked like a man. She had a flat chest. She had a muscular physique and all that stuff. She actually, over time, over that year, she had jaw surgery to give her more of a feminine jaw. She had breast implants. She had a little bit of plastic surgery done to her face. And because she wanted to look more feminine, but she still kept her size. She was still bigger than some of the men on the roster. Like, she was huge. She was huge.
And to your point, Jess, even in her debut, I mean, JR says, "Is that a woman?" He staggers and says, "Is that a woman?" That they played on it on purpose. I mean, that was not. I guarantee you, Vince is like, question if she's a woman. It's just the way, bro. I mean, that's just the way it is and the way it was. And you know what? I guess that's where Like, do I fault Jarrett? Not really.
No.
But at the same time, man, good gravy. Look what Joni had to go through. Are you kidding me? Like, all this shit that Jess is talking about that everybody thought, everybody wanted to say or did say, and she's still striving and she's still getting pops in the realm of what, in spite of all this.
I think it would have been better if it was just in a straight up one-on-one, no gimmick match. Like she overcame and beat Jeff Jarrett in a straight up one-on-one, fair.
No, I think that would have been worse.
I think Jarrett wouldn't have done it either.
When I look back on it now, I'm kind of glad that they did it in that fashion because she had to use weapons to do it. And again, you got to crawl before you can walk when you introduce anything to the world, whether it's someone that breaks a barrier down or you know what I mean. Like, so looking back, I accept it more. And when you watch it, and Dave made a good point, he's like, look at the crowd, listen to that pop. Like, and that's what wrestling is all about. And I lost sight for a minute on that as a fan because I was like, a woman is going to win a men's title. What are we doing here? And, look at where we are now. And I respect where we are now. And I'm not saying that I don't think that women can do anything that men can, but would you put the best women's boxer in there with Mike Tyson in his prime? You wouldn't, though. And that was my thing. And I know you have more creative freedom in wrestling, so I get wrestling's fake. I get it. But like at the same time, could Ronda Rousey beat Brock Lesnar? No. And I put those two together because Brock Lesnar's a legit MMA fighter, right?
Yeah. That doesn't fit.
Or Cain Velasquez. Could she beat Cain Velasquez? No. Like, could she beat Dos Santos? No. Like, she beat Matt Hughes. No, like no, because Matt Hughes.
But hey, Jess, can she beat Jeff Jarrett?
Well, she did, as a matter of fact.
I'Ronda Rousey. I'm sorry. Can Ronda Rousey beat Jeff Jarrett?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes. But
that's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you completely. It's funny because I swear, Cuz and I had this conversation months ago on Twitter about it. People were fighting over. All of this, the woman faction and women doing this.
Comparing her to Brock. Brock's a fucking super heavyweight.
Well, no, it's not. Well, yeah, but to your point,
maybe compare her to Conor McGregor. Could she beat Conor McGregor?
Maybe.
No. I'll tell you right now, no, that's not going to happen. And that's not me being sexist. There's no way that's going to happen.
Anyone that thinks
to your point, it's the same size, roughly, right? Like, I mean, like, I don't remember how much Ronda weighs, but she cannot be Conor McGregor.
Unless she catches him funny. I mean, let's be honest.
Because men are wired different than women, and that's not a bad thing. That's just that's an obvious that's an observation.
It's biological.
Well, here's the thing, and this is where I think you're going. Right. This is the deal. When you start talking about it in those regards, it sounds sexist, but it's not. It needs to make sense. And none of those situations that you put into play just makes sense. But I'm telling you right now, I found it very believable that someone like Chyna could beat up a chicken shit heel like Double J. I don't have a problem with that.
And looking back right now, I admit I was a little bit defensive when I was a fan back in 1999.
Sure.
And I look at it now and I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. That was awesome.
But I'm telling you right now,
I'm being honest. Like it. Now I look back on it, I'm like, that was cool. But at the time, I was like, this is weird. Like,
and these were the examples I gave, because everyone's like, well, why can't just any woman beat any man on the roster? It's like, I said, at the end of the day, it has to be believable. I said, look, can Ronda Rousey beat Double J? I said, yeah, probably. I don't think that's an issue because she has way more talent and all these skills that Double J can't match and can't do anything with. Now, can Alexa Bliss beat Brock Lesnar? That was the example I gave. I'm like, of course not. That's ridiculous. It's not even close.
But no, it would be better. Can Alexa Bliss beat Jeff Jarrett?
No.
Okay, that's
Still
better.
No.
You know what I mean?
But either way, it proves my point. It has to make sense,
right?
And that doesn't make sense. It has to be believable. If it's believable, I'll watch it. I will watch Chyna beat the crap out of a chicken shit hill like Triple H. And you know who got that more than anyone?
When we're posing the question, can Alexa beat so and so? We're talking about just the visuals. Like, I don't know. Fucking Alexa Bliss could be a deadly karate. I don't even know. She could be a black belt. I have no idea.
Well, Dave, when Dave and I was actually already engaging with someone who was making some ridiculous, stupid complaint. And then I tagged you in it and I said, this is just getting so crazy with these, I'm going to say it, social justice warrior fans, that next thing you know, they're going to be complaining that Alexa Bliss isn't in the main event with Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. And then the guy actually responded. Remember, he said, well, if the storyline is right, I mean, and it would. I'm like,
no. Alexa Bliss is all of like 120 pounds. She's not going to be able to take on a 263-pound man. It just doesn't make sense.
I just think it's ridiculous that we're in a day where
your point, and that makes sense. And when you get over the woman versus man thing, you're right. If it's the same size and it's an equal playing field, like it's not impossible.
And it's not even that. Between you and me, I'm probably 100 pounds heavier than Ronda right now, and she'll kick the shit out of me. Yeah, I know that.
She'll beat us all up.
I mean, and I don't. Honestly, I go more power. A woman can do whatever they want as long as my fucking dinner's made and my laundry's done.
And the sandwich is made, and the beer is open, and that's all. That's all I ask.
Such a fucking.
Oh man,
you guys are such chicken shit hills. I'm.
Hey man,
it's not chicken shit hills.
Why do I always? I'm
the Intercontinental Champion. Come and beat me.
Why do I always have to be gorilla in this conversation? God damn it! Will you stop?
Yeah. Will you stop?
But no, looking back, it was awesome, and it was kind of cool to see, and they really did well with Chyna. You had to do something with her, right?
And to your point, we talked about how Jarrett just didn't get it. You know who got it, and who always seems to get it? Who are we talking about next?
Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho, one of my favorite wrestlers ever.
He just gets it, bro. He's like, I'll do a feud with Chyna. I don't care. That's cool. Let's do it. And she actually beats him the first time.
And they were straight up matches, though. Well, that was
she defeats him.
Not only was she the first woman to ever win the IC belt and the only woman,
that's cool.
She was a 2-time Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah. She beats Jericho at Survivor Series. She loses at Armageddon. And then they face off on SmackDown. And they controversially ended pinning each other. And what's funny is they declared them co-champions. And they had to defend those titles together.
That's right.
And then eventually Jericho beats her and Hardcore Holly in a triple threat match. Yep. But what's really kind of weird, the co-champion reign no longer is recognized. And then it's considered a continuation of his second reign. Which is interesting, and then she even teams with him afterward, which is kind of cool. That's the kind of stuff that Jericho just gets. He gets it to this day. I don't care where you put Jericho, what faction you put him with, what federation you put him with. Jericho always finds a way to find himself in the storyline because he just understands what the crowd's going to want, what they're going to anticipate, what he can make work. Showing Goldberg why he's such a douchebag because Goldberg could have given Goldberg shit for 6 months and then eventually Goldberg would have destroyed him and it would have just gone over like nobody's business. And some people can't get out of their own way. Jericho's like, dude, I'm trying to set you up, bro. Like, come on. Jericho understands it every which way you can possibly think of.
And that's what wrestling's all about. It's setups.
That is what it's all about. Yeah.
Setups and payoffs. That's what it's
Jericho
about.
And Jericho's all about the setup and the payoff just takes care of itself. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, eventually, even with Kevin Owens, I know we're going to have a tangent, but, they did the Friends episode and finally Kevin Owens just takes the payoff and just punishes him, But that run with them is, I'm talking about my best friend. This is amazing stuff,
man.
And eventually, KO takes the payoff and just punishes him, and that puts Kevin on another level, which was Jericho's job. It kind of still is. Jericho's job is he's older, put people over. When you're older, you put them over. That's how it works. And Jericho now understands that. I mean, he just gets it. I don't even know how else to say it. Jericho just gets it. Phenomenal stuff by Jericho working with this. So, and then we get into the I miss this guy. Get a little tear every time. I think I still have a shirt in my closet.
Poppy.
She aligns with Big Poppy. She aligns with Guerrero for a little over a year or so. They become the on-screen boyfriend-girlfriend tandem.
One of my favorites.
And they start off as villains and they become fan favorites. He starts to call her Mamacita.
Well, this is my fondest memory of Chyna.
Yeah, same here.
Guerrero would go on to win a world title and deservedly so, and do bigger things in the sense of what you try to accomplish in wrestling and win championships. But this was a highlight of Guerrero's career too. And there's a little bit of clips I have here.
Hey, remember Eddie Guerrero? He can't hurry the King Ring. Chyna beat the Godfather, but now it's Eddie and Chyna one-on-one.
Oh, come on, baby. Scissor, but don't break it.
And you need to be serious about this match tonight.
I am serious.
Look, tonight don't think of me as Mamacita, okay? You better think of me as your opponent. Don't underestimate me.
Okay.
Chyna
Okay,
versus
I'm
Eddie
serious.
Guerrero. It's next.
And so they did,
okay.
they had great chemistry and it made sense. And Guerrero was so good. And I think people forget about it. And I can't help but think that Chyna learned so much from him when they were together, because Guerrero was so good on the mic and so funny with his character that I think Chyna really learned how to be a little bit funnier and a little bit looser, because she'd always been the serious bodyguard, and then she got thrown into wrestling men and stuff, but with Guerrero she got to really kind of be a character and be different, and she fell for it. And she was so much bigger than him, because Guerrero at heart is a cruiserweight, let's be honest. Chyna was so much bigger than him, and it's funny, and she was this huge imposing figure and just this little Mexican charmer, would just charm her. It was great. It was funny.
Yeah, and what's funny about this time frame too is she actually wins the IC title here, so technically she's a 3-time champ, but they don't recognize it because once Jericho took the title over, they kind of erase her time there, which is just I think it's kind of off-putting yet fitting, because they try to erase her all the time. It feels like to me they try to forget about her, but she won the title here, which they call it a second title run for the Intercontinental title, and she loses it 2 weeks later to Jericho in a triple threat match with Angle, which probably was amazing. You should go back and watch that one. I would highly recommend anything with Guerrero and Angle in it. It's just going to be money at this time. So, and then that particular pairing ends in about November 2000. Obviously, Eddie is cheating on Chyna in the shower with 2 other women. What do you guys have to say about that storyline, that time frame? I mean, that's just, like I said, it was great stuff.
I didn't want it to end, but I knew they had to. But I didn't want it to end. But after a while, they had to kind of release Guerrero and let him go do something else and put Chyna into something else.
And to your point, Jess, wasn't Guerrero kind of moving on to the upper echelon? They were going to start putting him on top here, kind of moving
a little bit.
That.
Yeah, we're getting more towards 2000, 2001. So yeah, they were trying to figure, but at the same time, he was going through a lot of problems. Guerrero was as well.
Sure.
When he got brought into the company, he was part of the Radicals, and he was just part of him, Benoit, Saturn, and Malenko jumped ship and came in, and they were just trying. WWE, they got to break them down like the military and then rebuild them.
Yeah, so down.
He had substance problems, and he had a lot of stuff, and issues, and I think they gave him the character job with Chyna to kind of just try to flush out, his personality, and it worked really well, but. I mean, I know in 2000, 2001, he had problems. And shortly after, I think he actually even wrestled in Ring of Honor after WWE released him for his problems. And he went and wrestled in Ring of Honor and got a little bit of help and came back and then continued his career on after that.
Yeah.
But Chyna, I think shortly after this, got ushered into the women's division, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this is kind of where it comes in. This is where, to your point, Jess, a lot of the changes start to develop, and she at this time she had posed for Playboy magazine in the November issue, so she'd already kind of appeared in Playboy in
2001, 2009.
So it's November 2000, yeah. So and then it rolls into 2001. So it was obviously put into the storyline. and it draws the right to censor to come out. Right to censor starts to develop, and she begins a feud with Ivory, who is, Ivory is quite a story in itself. I'd love to talk about that someday. She has just this such long run with wrestling, even with Glow and other places, and she's pretty impressive. I mean, Ivory was well ahead of her time, and they have that feud for a while, and this is kind of where that women's division kind of starts. So they do some real life storyline stuff where she has an injury and they even check on her in the ring, and something that hadn't been done
this
since
is all
the
built towards WrestleMania 17, where Chyna would challenge for the women's championship, challenge for the first time. And it's funny, like I said earlier, she was Intercontinental Champion, a men's title, before she won the women's title, or even challenged for it. And
what's funny is it wasn't even a match; they just squashed Ivory in this.
Yeah, and it was WrestleMania 17. It was in front of a lot of people, and she made history for herself. And let me just say, I know a lot of people give Chyna a lot of guff because she has a manly figure or whatever, but go watch the WrestleMania 17 match. Chyna is a good-looking goddamn woman. If you go back and look at this match, like she's really, really, really good looking at this point. And I'm not saying she ever wasn't good looking, but she did a lot of work to herself and all that stuff. But yeah, she looked really, really hot in this, and she made short work of Ivory to win her first championship.
Yeah, for sure. It's a squash.
Good grief! Look at this strength. Ivory upstairs with nowhere to go but down. Chyna enjoying this, and it is over. And Chyna, was it academic? Who can say? But in any event, Ivory has lost the WWF Women's Championship. Chyna is the WWF Women's Champion. She did it.
That was her first and only women's title run.
And I hated that song.
She only defends it one time, and then she has to make.
I hated that song.
It was
annoying. Just like Stephanie McMahon's theme song. I hate Stephanie McMahon's theme song.
Oh, you love it, shit.
I'm never gonna be
you love it. So she actually defends her title against Lita at Judgment Day, and she won that match, but she had to vacate it because this is where I guess the majority of the drama ensues. For people that don't know, Laura had been in a long-time relationship with Triple H. I mean, they were
behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. Yeah,
they lived together.
I'm sure they trained together. They were always together.
Sure they had sex.
They had sex together.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. They were probably the only person that didn't get it videotaped, apparently, too. So
yeah, I guess so.
And then somewhere in there, and this is where you just don't know anything.
Nose dive into Chyna.
You don't know how it happened. You didn't know how long it was going on. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, people start to realize that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon are together. But in the process,
they had a storyline going on too.
Yeah, they did. They had the on-screen not so romance where Triple H is taking advantage of her, getting married to her while she's passed out.
He basically raped her.
Yeah.
He did. He raped her.
Stuff that you can't do today on television, right? It's just
he did.
It's just ridiculous.
She got drunk at her bachelorette party when she was supposed to marry Test, and then Triple H intercepted her, and then after he married her at the little Vegas chapel. But then after he said a line something like "We consummated the marriage" afterwards.
Yeah, and she's like, "Oh my God!"
As a
member of the immediate family,
he's got a wedding ring.
I know that you can only have one question on your mind, Dad.
Oh my God!
I hate you!
And that is...
I hate you!
Not did we, but how many times did we consummate the marriage?
Oh my God, I cannot believe that. Triple H has married.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you cannot do this.
There will never be a movement that will be against what I did. It's always going to be legal and fine.
Yeah,
me too, mother.
Ever and ever.
It's so
rise above men.
So during all this time in the story,
David.
Oh my God,
I'm going to get you drunk and rape you.
This is never gonna be over.
Yes, David.
Oh my God.
Nose too.
Oh. That sounds good. That's what happened, like Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
The storyline was he roofied Stephanie. No, she got drunk at her bachelorette party, right? And then he found her, and then he took her through the chapel thing and got married against her will, which is ridiculous, but okay. And then he said we consummated the marriage. So he insinuated that he had sex with a passed out drunk Stephanie. I'm not making this up. This is literally what happened.
This really happened. Yeah.
I did say the rape word, but isn't that rape? That's ridiculous.
It is.
I'm pretty sure she didn't know about it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know how that was acceptable back in 2000.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff they would do. Yeah, it's amazing, So maybe to your point, Vince says I can't do decent storylines because everyone's so sensitive now.
Like, do it. So in 2001, she does win the women's title. She goes into a feud with Lita, and I do remember that. And then she just pretty much leaves.
Yeah, she just disappears. That's her last.
Because
match.
what happened was Triple H and Stephanie, for a while before that, they were in a storyline where we described where Triple H took advantage of her when she was drunk and married her in Vegas and whatever. And then they became an on-screen couple where Stephanie actually was like, I like being married to him. I like him. And then she became a heel too. So it kind of started the Stephanie character. So, but behind the scenes, Chyna and Triple H were basically engaged. I don't think they were technically engaged, but they lived together. They had been in a relationship for like 2 years. So they were like serious and living together and in a relationship. And then slowly behind the scenes, because Triple H would be, married, quote unquote, to Stephanie on camera, they started falling in love with each other. And then basically Triple H left Chyna. So Chyna was stuck basically trying to exist backstage while her ex-lover was with Stephanie, the boss's daughter. How awkward is that? And Chyna, we kind of talked about it before, but she was probably doing substances here. Like she was probably abusing here. And I think it just got worse for her. I think so to cope, Chyna started doing a little bit more drugs. She had, like people view drugs as like cocaine or heroin, and it wasn't. When you're in the wrestling industry, you really get hooked on pain pills, sleep aids, and alcohol. And those are like the big three that really fuck you up. On top of that, you could be, at this time, growth hormones were being introduced because steroids were illegal. So people were trying to find growth hormones that weren't illegal if you pissed them out. So basically, like, all the illegal stuff is like obvious steroids and all that stuff. But you couldn't get popped if you had a growth hormone. And then basically the, athletic commission and the testing would find growth hormones and you can't do those either. Anyway, so, that all these drugs are running around in wrestling, and Chyna already had a weak constitution. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but she came, she was always struggling with addiction and always kind of, using, whether it was steroids. I don't know if she used steroids. I don't know that she used male hormones, but to get the size that she was and to look like a man, she had to have been doing something to her body.
She definitely
on top of other stuff that she did. When you get in the wrestling world, you get introduced to somas. You get introduced to Oxycontin. How do you say it? Oxycontin?
Oxycontin.
Yeah, you get introduced to all that stuff, and then you start washing it down with vodka or alcohol, or well, that is alcohol, but like beer or vodka or hard liquor, and then I wake up with a hangover. You got to take something mega strong to get your hangover away and wake you up and pep you up on top of that. So it's a form of speed, and then I can't fucking go to sleep. So you take something to go to sleep, and it becomes a vicious cycle. And Chyna was kind of always in that, and then this emotional thing that happened with Triple H leaving her in real life and, going with the boss's daughter. How are you going to fight against that? Vince can say all he wants. I was against it. And then, Stephanie and Triple H try to tell, no, Vince didn't like us. And for a while, we had to stop seeing each other. I think we heard that on Bruce's podcast, right, Dave? Like, he said that they pretended to break up in front of the boys and all that stuff. And, but then they were secretly hooking up behind the scenes.
That should never really happen.
Yeah. Like, and so I feel for Chyna on this. You're at work, which, dating someone at your work is rough anyway. And they always say, don't marry or be with someone that's also a wrestler. If you're a wrestler, it never works out.
But now they're all married. Everybody in the freaking roster is married at the moment to somebody that's on the roster.
Back then it was like, I think it's kind of is still like college now, when you look at Paige's sex tape and stuff like that. But I mean, like now I think, it's more common to be married. It's a husband and wife traveling on the road together. It's not as, there's no drugs that free flow. I'm not saying nobody does drugs, but it's a pretty clean locker room. It really is. Like,
sure.
People always make jokes. All this generation of wrestlers, all they want to do is go play video games and, surf online and stuff like that. Well, oh my God, heaven forbid, they're good at their job. And then when they relax, they don't fucking, slam every drug you can think of and then wash it down the 12-pack. Heaven forbid that they don't do that, that they're clean.
Yeah, that they're staying out of trouble.
Yeah, their spare time is killed by playing video games.
Unless you're an Uso.
God. What a crazy life they're living. Like, they're not dying when they're fucking 40. What? Who would have thought of that? That's crazy. So, Chyna was just in this vortex of, all these different drugs were being introduced to the sporting world, not just wrestling. And she got caught up in that. And then she had a weak constitution anyway because of her past. So she was emotionally weak and she just fell into it. And this is really where started to swirl the drain, so to speak.
Yeah, this is where her world really, of wrestling anyway, really collapsed. Like I said, she has some stints in New Japan, less than a year, TNA, less than a year. Some decent ideas for storylines, but at the end of the day, I don't think that those particular federations really knew what to do with someone like that. I think WWE really at that point knew exactly what to do with her and did a great job with it. But unfortunately, personal life, and I think to your point, Pritchard said it best: when people can't help when they fall in love, and Chyna was the trash that was taken out in the process, and that's really how she felt, and that's how I believe she was treated. I don't think anybody wanted it to be that way, but you can't help what happened. If you're Triple H and Stephanie, they're married now. They got 2 kids. You can't help the fact that I guess they found each other, right? And that sucks for Chyna. But that's the way it went down, and that was the ultimate collapse for her. Because I don't know. I know some people are like, oh, I can't believe what she did next. She obviously probably didn't want to do that. She probably wasn't in her right mind, but who knows? I'm not going to sit there and judge it because her career takes a drastic turn from this point. After wrestling, especially after New Japan, she kind of hits her first pornography career debut. And it's not just with anybody. It is with X-Pac. It's with Sean Waltman. We're talking about One Night in China. And, it's kind of interesting. I know people are like, oh, my God, I can't believe she did that, blah, blah, blah. But you know what, guys? She, in 2006, that won an award for the best-selling title of the year. That sold more videos or tapes than any other XXX movie, for that time frame. So I don't know what else you can really say to that. Everybody wanted to see it. Obviously, she took advantage of that. I'm sure hopefully there was a lot of money involved in her for that. I don't know. I don't know how anybody feels about it. I'm not one to judge. That was her decision. It's legal. And it's not an easy subject to talk about, but this is where we are. I don't know if you guys want to comment on that, but
no,
I'm just kidding.
Jeez. It's look.
No, she's good.
When you're an attractive woman or a spectacle.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like I said, I really mean it. Go watch, Chyna. I'm not trying to objectify her, but go watch her at WrestleMania 17. She's a beautiful woman. She really is. And she worked on her look and all that stuff. And
she's an attraction.
Yeah, exactly. But she's an attraction because she kind of is a man. She used to look really like a man. And so people are still kind of curious. And we kind of skipped past her Playboy thing. She did 2 Playboy shoots. She did one with the WWF, and then she did one right after she left, which kind of was off her WWE fame. And she did it, and it didn't sell as well as the first time, but it sold pretty good. A lot of people honestly just wanted to see if a dick was going to fall out. I hate to say it, like that's you could Photoshop Playboy, but I want to see her porn because God damn it, I know she has a cup.
These guys are just really funny.
Sean and I both got jumbo weenies, but Chyna, show us what you're bringing to the barbecue, girl.
Uh-oh.
That is the big
And I know that sounds rough, but that's most people's fucking lame-ass one-way thinking attitude, was that they just really wanted to see it. So I think people wanted to see the train wreck, this former wrestling star that was obviously, it had already been rumored that she was abusing substances and she's not well and all that stuff. And then, now she's going to be naked and have sex. Well, there's got to be some kind of small pee-pee that's going to come out, and it's the truth. I think that's why it sold well, because I'm pretty sure every video after that didn't sell that well from her because, people just, the interest on the first one was like, let me just make sure that's not it's a woman, but that's not interesting. That's not interesting because we wanted to see something else.
Sure.
I'm sure everyone just wanted to see if X-Pac was going to do the Bronco Buster to her.
And he kind of did.
Bronco Buster.
My goodness. So, her television and film career, there was a lot of stuff.
He's well endowed, actually, X-Pac.
He what?
Hey. Well,
he's well endowed.
Good for him. That's great. Yeah.
I mean, come on, Dave. Give him fucking credit.
I'd rather not. I'd rather not even talk about it.
I'd rather you give him credit.
Hey.
You know what's going to happen if you don't give him credit, Dave.
The winkies
don't
come
black
out
around me. I'll take you to the wedding chapel and then, give you the
raid your privacy.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Good gravy.
Sounds like a good time.
Right
so, television and film, ladies and gentlemen. She's been on the Howard Stern show. She's appeared on Third Rock from the Sun. She was a police officer. That's interesting. She was a special guest on Fear Factor, and she was up for a role in Terminator 3. Didn't get it. Can you imagine if she got that Terminator 3 role? That would have been pretty legit. I don't know. Would have been all right. She was the host on Robot Wars. She appeared on celebrity game show Hollywood Squares. I think the one that everybody knows her from is The Surreal Life. We were talking about this earlier. This is where I think the real life of Chyna behind the scenes that we never saw really came to surface, and you start to understand the demons that are working with Chyna here, really kind of controlling her. And X-Pac didn't help that he actually showed up on the show, which I'm sure they planned, because reality shows are just pieces of shits, just whatever controversy we can get and ruin someone's life. Let's just put that on television. And, to Jess's
well, but that
point,
was society, it's like,
of course. Yeah.
We always say, if you don't like something, what happens when an artist puts out an album or whatever?
You don't like it, don't buy it.
Yeah. And it doesn't sell. It goes away. They stop producing stuff because if nobody buys it, then, but unfortunately people watch that shit. And I can't say that there's some, reality shows that I didn't watch too, because that was part of society a while ago. It still is now, but back then, in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was all fucking reality shit, man. It was all that. It was all about it.
You don't have any, forgive me, any talent.
But we're still entertaining people.
Don't be rude.
Are you kidding me?
I swear to God, don't.
Scott, your whole ass is out.
I'm finally a Kardashian.
Take off
now kids just watch other kids play Fortnite. It's interesting.
Which, again, we make fun of that now, but how safe is that compared to, the toxic stuff that we watched in the early 2000s? I mean, it's I'll take this any day of the week. Sure.
So, she appeared in some other things, just another romantic wrestling comedy, Illegal Aliens. I guess that was Illegal Aliens is where she was with Anna Nicole Smith before her death. She actually appeared in that role with her. Just a few other things here and there. Her personal life, there's an interesting tidbit here. I don't know if you guys knew this. She had custom-made breast implants after her first implants were ruptured in a wrestling match. She complained to her plastic surgeon that the largest implants did not suit her frame the way she desired. So her custom implants became the model for what they called the Chyna 2000s.
Now everybody knows that Chyna is not only the toughest woman in the World Wrestling Federation, but she is now the breast damn woman in town.
Sean, if Chyna had a nipple for every time somebody said she was the breast-looking woman here.
A model of breast implant now marketed to large frame women and female bodybuilders. She claims she paid $6,000 for those implants. But They are now called the Chyna 2000s. They were made specially for her, and now there's a special market for those. So she even broke the breast implant mold, if you will. How about that?
Yeah, that's cool.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. It's the first time I've heard of that.
I never heard that before
That's
either.
interesting. Yeah, and they talk about how she hides her relationship with Triple H, but I don't think that was hidden for very long. You saw a video of her leaving with him after every venue. It was not easily hidden, right?
Right.
Yeah, and let's see, there were some debates on whether or not there was debate to whether or not Triple H started his relationship with Stephanie while they were together. And according to after her death, her sister said that the couple disagreed about having children. Triple H wanted children where she did not want children, and then her addictions and mental health contributed to the breakup. So according to her sister, she had claimed that Triple H and her had already been broken up, but who knows what Triple H put in her pocket? I'm just saying. I don't know.
Well, I think Triple H might have even said that too, that they were kind of, even though they lived together, like he didn't really sleep there, together. Or he slept on the couch, and they were pretty much over. Right? Yeah, they were over before and all that. But I mean, come on, like
but she wasn't. She obviously wasn't right.
I think it was a combination. I don't think she was mentally stable. I think Chyna always had emotional problems, and I think Triple H, when he met Stephanie and realized, like, I believe that he legitimately liked Stephanie, but it also comes with the extra added prize that she's the boss's daughter. So I think Triple H knew right then and there, like, yeah, I'm just going to go this road. And again, like, let's be honest, like, who wouldn't have chosen that road?
Yeah. There's a few more personal tidbits in here. Apparently, she was arrested for domestic assault for beating the shit out of X-Pac in 2005.
Yeah, I remember all that.
Because X-Pac wouldn't hit her.
So I guess it answers my question that women can beat men, so maybe it's not so far-fetched.
There you go, right? So she couldn't use the term Chyna because of the trademark, so she began using Chyna Doll for public appearances.
Yeah, I remember that too.
And then she legally changed her name to Chyna after that. Obviously, we know about the substance abuse. This is kind of what winds into her death. She was found dead in her home at Redondo Beach. She was only 46 years old. Her manager had grown concerned.
I can't believe she was 46.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
That's old. I mean, that's young to die, but I mean, God, she was 46. That's old in the sense of, like, when we first started watching her. Like, that's crazy.
She looked amazing.
And she still looked
young. It's young to die for sure, but I mean, God, she's fucking 46. She was close to 50. I mean, she was on the way to 50. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting that her manager grew concerned because she wasn't posting any updates or content to her usual social media outlets for several days. So he went up to the house and he found her already dead. Accidental drug overdose or natural causes, it says. But I think, Jess, you have more information on what was in her system, which was pretty volatile.
I mean, it was alcohol, it was antidepressants, it was painkillers, and it was sleep aids. All of that was in her system.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't just the one night she took it. Chyna was living, it's like playing Russian roulette with a gun, like
sure.
one time that bullet's going to be in that chamber and it's going to shoot you right in the head. And how many nights did she get away? I mean, really, how many years did she get away with alcohol, pills every night, wake up, rinse, repeat, and I just, that's just what a lot of wrestlers went through, when you hear a lot of wrestlers dying and of overdoses, and, British Bulldog and even wrestlers that died, like Guerrero died. He was clean when he died, but I mean, the damage that he did, to himself over those years caught up with them. So even when you stop and you clean up, you're like just a heart attack away from saying goodbye in your sleep.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about this is the actual list according to this report. December 2016, the autopsy is released. She died on April 20th of an overdose of alcohol combined with anxiety drugs, diazepam and nordazepam, painkillers, oxycodone and oxymorphone, and the sleeping aid temazepam was all in her system at the time of her death. That's just insane.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and it was probably, to your point, Jess, she was probably playing that roulette every single night, unfortunately. And that's just sad. It's tough. And it starts from a very young age and being just very not confident and people taking advantage of who you are and what you look like and what you're capable of doing, I suppose. And And I'm sure she was very strong and got over it for a period of time. But as soon as her world of the WWE crashed down, everything kind of came back to surface,
I got a clip here of about, when we talked about earlier in the episode about how Vince wasn't sure, that she was the right fit.
It's probably maybe my fourth show. They were in town, and all of a sudden he comes out, and they said that, this is Joni. And I shook his hand, and he went, hello, how are you? How are you? Oh, you certainly are in shape, aren't you? And that was it, and he took off, and so it was just like a brief hello. I didn't really know. I knew that Vince ran the company, but I didn't really know that, wrestling was professional wrestling was pretty much Vince McMahon.
Right.
And so I guess I wasn't nervous. I don't remember being. I think I was probably more put off by the fact that he didn't gush and ooze all over me. Because I expected that.
Right.
Not in a conceited way, but I was thinking, okay, I've got these people telling me now that so there's something really different. This is going to be
pretty much no-sold you.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Stone poker face.
Right.
Very nice.
So that's funny because that's because of that little lull right after that, where Vince was just like, "Look, I don't think she's going to do it. I don't think people are going to believe it." WCW kind of snuck in and made an offer, and she almost took that. And then Shane called and said, "No, come on, we're going to hire you."
Yeah, we're going to do this. Yeah. So it's interesting. They talk about legacy, and there's some really decent quotes here and some things that are written here about Chyna that I think need to be said. And there's some stuff that's not so nice, right? And I think she's always the epitome of controversy and forcing change. Numerous commentators have credited Chyna as being influential to women's wrestling and one of the biggest stars of WWE's Attitude Era. Commentator and former WWE official Jim Ross described Chyna as the distinctive athlete was to WWE what Ronda Rousey has been to the UFC, while E! News said that Chyna accomplished more in her near-decade career than any woman had ever done at that time. Others praised Chyna as a feminist icon who defied gender norms. Don Heineken, a professor of women's and gender studies at the University of Louisville, wrote in 2004, she was demonized as a feminist who challenged male dominance. Her latest and most popular incarnation was that of a sex symbol. She was the first woman to compete in the Royal Rumble match and is the only woman to have held the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Luke Weekly of Sports Illustrated listed Chyna as the 79th greatest wrestler of all time. Interesting. Beth Phoenix credits Chyna with breaking down doors in the industry, and independent wrestler Kimberly credits her as her influence to get into wrestling.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up. That was the episode of Chyna. I got to say, there was a lot of great things happening in that career, in that life, and a lot of terrible things. We had a first women's IC champion, I think only women's IC champion. We had the first women's Royal Rumble entrant ever. A lot of first. What's your guys' take on Chyna? Because we know, as of right now, she has been inducted into the Hall of Fame, but it's more of like I'd say it is a group induction. It was like she's almost an afterthought once again. I can't believe Chyna is always kind of viewed as this afterthought in wrestling. A woman that achieved so much, the first of so many different aspects of wrestling and things outside of wrestling too. What's your take? Do you think she's worth more than a DX Hall of Fame induction? I guess that's my question.
I think when I first heard that she was going to be put in the Hall of Fame as part of DX, I was like, that's kind of bullshit. That's kind of like an easy way out. But then if you really watch their speech and they all kind of independently pay tribute to her and they put her picture up on the big screen, I think they did really good inside that group induction of, putting the spotlight on her for a little bit and saying, look, like, she's no longer with us. Triple H even said she was a huge reason as to why I got over to where I could become the single star I became. So he did. And that was a lot coming from him. And people could say what they want about Triple H and the politics and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, the fact that they brought her name up and they spoke, they could have easily just inducted her and put her picture up there and not really touched on her. But instead, like Six, X-Pac, whatever you want to call him, 1, 2, 3 Kid, he went out of his way to say how much he loved her and respected her and what she did. And Shawn did too. And so did Triple H. Like I just said, he mentioned that, she was a huge reason as to why he became a single star. And he's right. Like putting her with him in the beginning as his bodyguard completely gave him that opening to become the single star that he became. If that didn't happen, I don't know if Triple H ever would have gotten over. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't know if they would have trusted him going forward in those storylines, because he didn't get with Stephanie until later, So Triple H was in there in 96, grinding it out in WWE. 95, actually. I take it back, 95. He was in there grinding it out, and then he got punished for the curtain call, which is a totally different podcast altogether. And, kind of just was trying anything. And then when they brought Chyna in to be his second / bodyguard, it changed everything for him. So I'm glad that they individually took time to really pay tribute to her and in an important way. And like I said, they put her picture on the big screen and, saluted her and all that stuff. So because they did that, I'm not mad that she did not get put in separately, individually. I think, yes, a couple of months ago, I would say, yes, she deserves to be in there separately. But because she's passed and because, she can't speak for herself and all that stuff, I think it's fine that they put her in like this. And again, the tribute that they paid to her, fitting, and I'm satisfied with that.
I guess I disagree a little bit. I do think she should be inducted on her own based on that merit. I really believe that one day they will figure out a way to get that done. I hate to bring it up, one day there's going to be an Owen Hart induction and it will be individualized. It will happen. I think it will happen. I think there's going to be a time where they'll figure out a way to make it work. It'll be a tribute. Maybe it'll be one of those legacy sets, but it'll be an individual induction eventually. So, but I do agree. That was a great segment on Chyna throughout that whole thing. I can't believe they let them go that long, but it was entertaining, I think, start to finish, the DX induction. It was great all the way around. I really wasn't bored. And the section on Chyna was absolutely fantastic and fitting, deserving. They could have done more with Chyna's induction, and I would have been fine with it. So the last question I have, I guess, before we wrap it up, I know that Sean Waltman talked briefly about calling the Women's Royal Rumble, the Chyna Rumble or Chyna Royal Rumble, or the
Chyna Invitational Battle Royal.
I'm sorry, yeah, the Battle Royal, excuse me, yeah.
Like the Andre.
Yeah, so instead of the Andre Giant Memorial, it'll be the Chyna Memorial Women's Battle Royal. Disagree? Agree?
I totally agree. Why not?
I agree.
Yeah. So
I was, I had the same problem too when she got inducted with the DX at first, with DX, I should say. But then I thought about it. I was like, well, she'll eventually get her own. And hey, Triple H is going in first time, as a group as well. So
yeah. And it's because
even though Triple H is on top,
but he's been active still, and I understand why they haven't done it yet.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, going in as a group, if Triple H can go in as a group first, certainly there's hope for Chyna.
I hope they do it though. They better do it though. Yeah, that's the thing. She does deserve her own.
Yeah, I agree with that. So Chyna Memorial Women's Battle Royal, something to be talked about hopefully in the near future. Like I said, guys,
deserving.
This is the O.W.P. This is Butters.
Well, hang, I kind of want to throw some in real quick. I apologize.
We'll pull an edit.
No. We can keep it live.
Okay.
This is only our third episode, but this particular episode, we touched on a lot of really rough and sensitive subjects. And, somebody was Triple H making a lot of comments towards Dave. And we're not trying to offend. There's a lot of, because of Chyna, drug abuse, pornos, just infidelity, things like that, were a part of her life and a part of the story. And our job is to keep things lighthearted and make people laugh. And we did use the R word a lot. I'll take ownership of that. And we didn't cut it out for a reason, because we like to keep things we were referencing an actual storyline that happened. So it wasn't something that we were just making up to try to be funny. We don't take light of these subjects, and we just want everyone to know that this was a pretty heavy episode when you really think about it, because of the way she passed and, what she was involved after she got out of wrestling. Her life, I think I mentioned earlier, kind of started swirling down the drain. And that's unfortunate. And we want to keep people laughing. We didn't cut things out on purpose because we want to be as honest as possible on this podcast, and we want to keep people laughing. We did use a lot of sensitive subjects to make people laugh earlier. If you're offended, I'm sorry, but that's just kind of what we do. And
lighten up, bitches.
It's also, just to give you some backing there, it's really difficult to not make light of it when WWE was banking off of it every single
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I think I went off on my tangent earlier, about it because of the fact that they really wrote that into storyline.
Yeah.
In the year 2000, apparently that was acceptable. You can, make, storylines up that you kind of, slept with someone against their will, and that was fine. That was part of the storyline, and it made sense, and whatever. And that's
pretty
really
bad.
That's the way it was, when people get, oh God, America's so pussified now, and we're so PC. I'm like, you forget from like 98 or 97 really to like, God, the mid to late 2000s, we were really desensitized to all this schmut and all the stuff that was on TV. And, again, you could take the side of like, oh, come on, get over it. It's just words. It's just this.
Great times.
And it is true. Great time. But I mean, like, but at the same time, like we're suffering a backlash of that now. We're going majorly the other way and going PG, especially ever since the Janet Jackson nipple slip.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, that's what started this whole thing, and us going the other way. And I think to balance this out as a society, we got to recognize where we came from. The late 90s or early 2000s were pretty rough, man, in the sense of like there was crazy stuff that was allowed on TV. I mean, just talking about wrestling storylines, but Jerry Springer stuff,
Jesus,
and South Park, and all this stuff that was like
dumbing down.
Yeah, we got really numb
Dumbing
to
down.
a lot of super serious stuff that we made, jokes out of. So again, we don't mean to offend anybody, but we're not going to change who we are either. But at the same time, I was keeping it in the context of the legit storyline that they wrote and aired on television, how the character of Triple H and the character of Stephanie McMahon got together was from that storyline. I literally did not make that up.
You can't make it
up. I wanted to say that because, Chyna passed away. And unfortunately, that stuff, even though that happened on air, off the air, it was pretty controversial and, adult themed as well. And, the way she passed away from drug abuse, and, we're not trying to make light of any of that. We really wanted to pay tribute to Chyna because, she was a huge part of professional wrestling, and she was a huge part of women and their movement. And she's a huge part of just what we remember in our 20s growing up, with her and DX, Chyna and DX and all that stuff. So that's all I wanted to say. We're here to make people laugh. This was a pretty heavy episode in the sense of we were talking about a lot of different subjects.
I think at the end of the day, we were talking about this a little earlier off air, and Chyna is a lot, and this sounds really crazy, but she's a Roger Maris. If you guys don't know who Roger Maris is, he actually broke Babe Ruth's home run record. And I want to say for at least 3 decades, they tried to erase that with an asterisk. Like it really didn't happen because he had more games to play than Babe Ruth did. Chyna has been, in a lot of ways, breaking ground. She was bigger than the game.
And I think you said like about him, he actually didn't want
He didn't want it. She didn't want it.
He didn't want to break the record. He just wanted to show up and play every day. Yeah. And by doing that, he actually broke his record. He wasn't as Babe Ruth was flamboyant. Babe Ruth was all these things.
Maris was none of that.
Yeah.
And Chyna wasn't that either, but Chyna wanted to be part of something bigger, and she did step up to the plate,
When you really think about it, she never spoke, but her character was super loud. But Chyna never really spoke in the beginning that much at all. And then she did promos, after she became, Chyna, and she won the IC belt and all that stuff. They had her start cutting promos and all that stuff. But really, like, Chyna was super silent in the beginning, but her character was so loud. Yeah. You were like, who's that?
She became bigger than wrestling in a lot of ways, even though she never asked for that. And she also never asked for that feminist movement. She never spoke out on it. She never went to war with it. She just proved it. And sometimes that just happens, whether you like it or not. You are bigger than something than you actually are. And that's just where she fell into. And she's part of a dynamic time in wrestling. And she changed wrestling in a lot of ways.
She was inspiring to a lot of girls.
She's inspired to a lot of people. Yeah. She made things happen that wouldn't happen before. You can argue that women's wrestling wouldn't be as advanced as it is now without her, because women wouldn't get those chances beforehand. We were watching a lot of bikini matches, bra and panty matches, mud wrestling matches before Chyna came.
And unfortunately, after Chyna, we
you
had to suffer through that stuff.
Yeah, you can argue,
and I mean that in the sense of like people would be like, "Really, you suffered through bra and panties?" Yeah, I did, because
it was bad. It was bad.
Again, like I said earlier, we like wrestling. We like professional
exactly.
wrestling.
Yeah,
and I didn't enjoy. Sure, we all give a reaction. Ooh, look at Trish in their underwear. That's fine.
Stuff like
that.
But
I mean, like we didn't want women.
That's not why you turned it on. Yeah, and Chyna turned the tide there. She really did. I mean, I know we saw more after that too, and that because quite frankly, that's what they thought was working. Eventually, people got sick of that too, and then guess what? Women actually started to get chances and starting to step up, and now you're seeing an incredible women's revolution, and now you're seeing a main event at WrestleMania that is an all women's match. So I could say without any kind of issue, thank you, Chyna, for starting a movement that you never intended to start, but you were still able to make something happen. So with that, guys, like I said, all I can say is thank you, Chyna. Thanks for everything that we see well, maybe not today, but thanks for everything that we saw in time of wrestling that was at its absolute peak, and thanks for bringing around the women's movement that we see now. I think it's pretty impressive, the level of women's wrestling that we see today. A lot of times they're better than the guys. I don't hate to say it. I kind of love to say it. There's some better technical wrestlers out there on the female side of the roster than some guys that are on the roster today because of things like that. So Pretty awesome. With that, this is the O.W.P. This is Butters along with Jess and Cuz signing off.
Lighten up, bitches.